Good evening, and welcome to the public meeting of the Halton District School Board. It is Wednesday, April the 21st, 2021. As per all of our board meetings, this meeting is being video voice recorded and will be posted on the HDSB website as well as on YouTube. At this time, I will take trustee roll call. Please answer as I call your name in alphabetical order. My last name, Trustee Amos.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Collard.
Good evening.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you, I am here.
Vice Chair Harrison.
Hello.
Trustee Garrett.
Good evening. Happy to be here tonight.
Trustee Gray.
Hello.
Trustee Oliver.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Reynolds.
Hey, everybody.
Trustee Rocha.
Good evening.
Trustee Shuttleworth.
Hi, everyone.
Trustee Taylor.
Hi, everyone.
And Trustee Vigilankara.
Good evening, everyone.
Director Miller, could you please note who on staff are in attendance this evening?
Thank you, Chair Vance. All senior staff are here, along with General Manager Thibault and Manager of the Director's Office Storemaker.
Thank you very much. This evening, Trustee Rocha will be honoring the land. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Arawandaraun, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions, land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you very much. Next, we are up to the agenda. Trustee Amos, would you like to move a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
And Trustee Rocha, would you like to second this motion?
I would.
Is there any discussion at all? I'll look to the speakers list. Seeing none, all those in favor? There we go. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We do not have any Inspire Awards this evening, but please do continue to nominate individuals or groups who support our students and their achievements. Nomination information is available on the hdsb.ca website. As per our agenda, we have no presentations or delegations this evening. So we are up to the consent agenda items. Trustee Reynolds, would you like to move a motion to deal with the consent agenda?
Happy to do so. Thanks.
Trustee Gray, would you like to second?
Yes, I would.
Okay, I'll put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items for April 21st, 2021. Are there any items to be pulled this evening? I'm looking to the speakers list. Hey, I was wondering, I don't see anyone on the speakers list, but could the administrative procedures about hiring please be pulled? Just looking for some information as per our discussion. Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Vance. To you, Chair Vance, and all trustees, thank you for pulling this one. We think it's important that it be pulled just so that Superintendent Taha can give a bit more detail. As trustees will recall, they passed a policy prior to the end of December around the new hiring practices as legislated in regulation from the provincial government. But it was drafted and was not completed. And so it was contingent on some changes that may or may not occur. We have now got the admin procedure, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Taha to give some just a brief history and what this means. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Miller, through you, Chair Grabens, to the rest of the board. As Director Miller pointed out, and you're aware that Regulation 274 was revoked in October 2020, I believe. The ministry since then released Policy Program Memorandum 165 that sets out requirements for teacher hiring practices for school boards. These requirements are now captured in those two APs, administrative procedures, that are before you. The expectations articulated in PPM 165, which are also reflected in the employment equity policy that the board passed back in December, are ultimately there to ensure a few things. One, that our hiring practices are fair, equitable, and transparent, which is essentially the spirit of this PPM, and that we promote and encourage the hiring of staff from underrepresented communities. And in doing so, we value a workforce that is diverse and rich in perspectives, in backgrounds, in lived experiences and skills and languages spoken at home, and so on and so forth. So this is really the spirit behind PPM 165, and in bringing the policy, the revised policy forward, and in the two APs to the board, we now can turn our attention to the implementation of these documents or these expectations, which is really where the heavy lifting is. So to that end, we begin training of our administrators next week on some of the elements of these APs and their application. And you may have heard me say this before, it's one thing to develop a policy and administrative procedure, and quite another to implement it with intentionality and with efficiency and effectiveness. And that's our goal. And it will be a journey. It's not a checkbox that we check that we've done. It will be an evolution in terms of our skill set and how we implement those values. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking to the speakers list. Seeing none, but thank you very much for all the work that's gone into this. I know that there have been many changes over the past while, and we were ahead of the game a little bit in December, and that's great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to move on to voting on the consent agenda. So all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And we are now up to approval of business transacted in private session. Vice Chair Harrison, do we have any business from private session that requires approval?
Yes, there is one motion, and I will read it for you. For the group, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolution from the Halton District School Board meeting in private session on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021, respecting property matters, report 21056, and I so move.
Thank you. And Trustee Shuttleworth, would you like to second this motion?
I sure would.
Excellent. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Chair Gerbens, if I may, I'd just like to note the correct report number, and that was 21063.
Okay. Thank you. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We are moving on to action items for this evening. As per our agenda, we have 4 action items. I'd like to draw your attention to item 421, school year calendar, report 21051. This is revised, and it was submitted by Associate Director Bogue. Trustee Daniele, as one of the trustees that sat on this committee, would you like the school calendar committee, would you like to move this motion?
Thank you. Yes, I would.
And Trustee Garrett, as the other trustee that sat on this committee, would you like to second?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I will read the recommendation. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the summary of statutory and board designated holidays and professional activity days for 2021-2022 as recommended through consultation with the school year calendar committee. Our Associate Director Bogue, do you have any information you would like to mention, especially perhaps about the revised part?
Thanks, Chair Gerbrands. Yes, just through you, 2 trustees. The revision is some minor language changes. At the request of Vice Chair Al Harrison, we put a little bit of additional language in there just about what happens on PD days, just for clarity for folks reading the report, and then put a little bit more detail in the appendix around those PD days as well. Date changes, the substance of the actual calendar has not changed. And the only other thing to update the board on, we usually follow our Catholic board friends by 1 night with approving the calendar. Theirs was to be approved last night, but I understand they didn't quite get to it. So theirs will likely happen, I think, at a special meeting on Monday is what I'm being told. So we'll be a little bit ahead of the game if the board chooses to approve the calendar tonight. And other than that, I have nothing further to add, Chair Gerbrands. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, I'm going to look to the speakers list to see if there are any questions. Seeing none. So I will call the question. All those in favor?
Chair Gerbrands, I think Trustee Gray wanted to have her hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry, Chair Gerbrands, I'm still having difficulty signaling my desire to speak. Just I had one question. I'm looking at the proposed school calendar Appendix B. I had one question on that, if I may. The second line down, last day of instruction for secondary students, says Tuesday, June 28, 2021.
We will fix that. Thanks very much, Trustee Gray.
Okay.
Good catch.
Okay. Thank you.
And actually, I was much faster than the internet. I missed Trustee Amos. She popped on.
Thank you. I think it's because I had to do a double click. Sometimes you have to click once, and sometimes you have to click twice. Thank you. Through you to Associate Director Bogue. I've received a few emails about the beginning of school starting at Rosh Hashanah and the concern about it's difficult. The fact that they understand it's difficult to work around potential conflicts, but it's important. It's an important and it's an important holiday for some to observe, and they feel that even though it's the beginning of school, there's some concern that if it's a staff member, that having supply teachers at the beginning of the year isn't necessarily great for students. So can you maybe explain, I know this was talked about before, could you please re-explain how this was looked at and why we are starting on that holiday? Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Amos, through the chair to Trustee Amos and all trustees. Yeah, it's not ideal. It's definitely not ideal. It was discussed. I think it was mentioned at the last board meeting as well when we first shared the calendar. Rosh Hashanah usually happens sometimes during September or October. I think in the last 10 years, there's been, I think in 2013 and 2010, it was in the very first week of school as well. not ideal. This is the first time that I'm aware that it's happened, that it's landed on the very first day of classes. So that's the unfortunate part. We know we will have some students that are celebrating and some staff who will not be there that day. And the first day of school is not ideal. But, I remember my days as a secondary principal, there are always last minute hiring that happens. And on any given year, there are supply teachers on that first day. That's a reality in all of our schools because of last minute changes and things that have happened over the summer. So not ideal, but the other thing that was considered was, to make that day a PD day as well, perhaps move the October PD day to September the 7th. But then we have some staff that are now missing the PD day as well. So there's a downside there as we're trying to move that learning agenda forward for all staff to have it as a PD day. The kids are off, but now we've got some staff members that would be off celebrating and would miss that PD as well. So there's no easy answer. I don't know if I've given a really satisfactory answer, but it's just we're kind of trapped with where Rosh Hashanah lands this year. And I know I had a conversation with one staff member, and I said, I would encourage you to celebrate like you normally do. People at the school will understand. People will pitch in to pick up and help out in your absence. Because first day is busy. First day of school is busy. But we certainly wouldn't want any employee to be in a position where they're worried about missing a day of school to observe a religious holiday. And we want them to make the same decision that they normally would.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you haven't voted, go right ahead. We're just missing one. There we go. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will now move on to the 422 Trustee Professional Development Committee report. And I know that I've had just a little communication on this, and so I'm just going to ask that, ask for a mover and a seconder, and then I'm going to ask Trustee Caller to clarify the motion to come forward. So, but before we can do that, I'm going to first ask Trustee Caller if she would like to move the motion to put this on the table. She's nodding. Okay. No sound. No, now we can. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah.
And Trustee Gray, would you like to second this motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. And Trustee Caller, could you please clarify what the motion is that we were going to consider this evening?
Yes, you'll recall at our last meeting, we passed a motion to create a standing committee for governance, which is a type of committee that we've had in the past, but we haven't had this term or in the last couple of years of the last term when we changed our structure. The purpose of standing committees is to provide ongoing committee format for things that don't just go away overnight. Governance is one of those things that doesn't go away overnight. It's an ongoing part of our job, and so is professional development of trustees. And that's why this motion is being brought forward. As you may remember, we've had a couple of opportunities for professional development this school year already. One on hiring a director, and one the virtual tour of the Woodland Cultural Center. We are currently undergoing the Anti-Black Racism series, and we will be bringing a motion to the next board meeting on part 2 of the DISC. That we were supposed to do that one about a year ago and put it on pause because of the pandemic, but who knew we would still be in the middle of a pandemic a year later. So we're bringing it back. So I think we can all recognize the importance of having professional development, especially as a group together. And I'm hopeful that you'll be able to support this motion. The second part of the motion has been somewhat slightly modified because the governance committee's second part of their motion was not read in the last meeting. And so we've added governance committee to that motion in order that both of them will be added to the trustees committee procedure, just to make sure that it's all complete there and we haven't left anything out.
Okay, so just for clarification, the first part is going to be exactly the same, and the second part is what you've sent me by email that I will read out. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I will do that now. So be it resolved that a trustees professional development planning standing committee be struck to plan meaningful and relevant professional development opportunities for trustees, and that members currently serving on the ad hoc trustees professional development planning committee shall continue to serve until the next annual striking committee process, and that the committee will report to the board no less than twice per academic year and more frequently depending on the workload. Be it further resolved that amendments to the board's committee's governance procedure be brought back to the board by June 2021, reflecting the addition of the trustees professional development standing committee and the governance standing committee. Is there any debate? Okay. Seeing none, I'm trying not to be faster than the internet here. Keep looking over. Okay, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to the next one, 423. I'd like to draw your attention to Federal COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream, CVRIS, Report 21062. And this was submitted by Executive Officer Gaudette. Trustee Shuttleworth, would you like to move this item?
Yes, I would.
And Trustee Reynolds, would you like to second?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read the recommendation. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board authorize staff to tender and award federal COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream projects as identified in Appendix A, either individually or combined, as outlined in Report 21062. So before I open the floor to debate, Executive Officer Gaudette, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Pleased to present tonight, now that the embargo has been lifted as of April 14th, this in public session, to announce that, yeah, we've been approved for 143 projects totaling $19.4 million. Staff are well underway, trying to organize the work and deliver it within our schools. We've got some exciting outcomes for our region. $3.3 million in outdoor learning sites or outdoor learning opportunities, $1.2 million in IT infrastructure, hopefully $5.2 million in open concept renovations to build some walls in some open concept schools, $5.6 million in ventilation upgrades for portables, as well as $2.2 million in building automation systems to help with our mechanical ventilation. And then we've got some smaller projects to support our childcares, as well as some window upgrades. So lots of work to undertake and try and deliver before the December 31st deadline. I'd be pleased to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much for this report, and I am looking to the speakers list, and we have Trustee Oliver. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Through your chair to Superintendent Gaudette. Thank you for this report. Happy to see that all those projects have been approved, very much needed. I'm wondering, given that we are still in the pandemic and given that there are limitations in terms of access to materials, some of the systems we're looking to purchase and upgrade, and even a workforce. And we have been given a timeline to begin by September 30th. How will you work to mitigate all those issues to ensure that we can in fact get going and do not lose out on this opportunity?
Thank you for the question through the chair to all trustees. I'm pleased to have joined an awesome team that is well poised to actually deliver on this. So they were well organized long before I joined the board. And I'm pleased to announce that we're well underway. We've actually got projects well in hand and have received tenders that are within our budgets for these projects. I will say we do need to have a few risk meetings with our teams to look at, I'll say, some of the more challenging projects, in particular our open concept schools. Those are still in design right now, and as such will be tendered later. And what we are finding is that, contractors are feeling the impacts of the pandemic and the supply chain problems. Pricing isn't being held as long for us any longer, so that is an issue. As well, we're certainly receiving intel from our partners in construction that there are substantial increases in some sectors, steel being one of them, wood certainly as well. So with these cost escalations, that we will need to assess these projects in terms of where we're at in terms of the more complicated designs and the timing of tender to recognize or realize, what we can actually achieve. We have found through the last little bit, even delaying an order by a week can have impacts of months for delivery. Like I say, some of these projects aren't without risk, and I'll say certainly our window projects, window renovations or replacements, and our building, open concept building, putting in walls and mechanical ventilation and going through a process of design and permitting. Those ones are more concerning, but certainly we've made some great headway in many of the other projects and are actually seeing some pretty successful tender results as well.
Do you have a follow-up at all, Trustee Oliver? No? Okay, thank you. Looking to the speakers list, Vice Chair Harrison, you're up next.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, just following on what Trustee Oliver was asking and the response that was provided, this is a very generous infusion of funds that will have a positive impact on many of the board schools. So I don't at all want to take away from that positive piece. But I do wonder whether we need to proactively liaise through all of our respective professional organizations, through the chair's call with the minister, for example, for leniency in terms of the delivery date of December 31st. I just don't, given the volume of the contracts to be let and notwithstanding the abilities and strategic abilities of staff, the pandemic has presented many challenges with, supplies and staff and so on. So I just wonder if there's a way that we can all be proactive to kind of seek that leniency.
If I could respond, certainly we're working through our professional associations and keeping the government informed of how we're progressing, and also advising them of the same concerns around the timelines that are associated with this. I just lost my train of thought, but certainly there's a couple levels of government here with both the federal government and the provincial government contributing to this fund. So, extending deadlines will be that much more complicated. But I do think that as more boards engage in these activities, trying to tender and let this work out, we will see what those true impacts are. And I think part of my thinking was just with what happened on Friday and into the weekend, with the latest lockdown, we certainly had lots of calls from contractors asking us what the status was of work. And so certainly we're trying to support this body of work as an essential service to support opening our schools and keeping them operational and supporting health and safety at our sites. So, but yes, we continue to advocate as well through our professional network.
May I follow up, please?
Of course, yes.
And so I'm hearing you say that it would potentially be useful to, for, when the opportunity arises, just to mention those possibilities at this point, because we're a long way out from December 31st. But I wonder whether we can request an update, by June timeframe, so we know how the process of letting those or assigning those contracts is going, and then maybe check in again in September after the busy school construction season, just to see how the price and timing piece, because yeah, as you indicated, there are different levels of government involved, and as Trustee Oliver pointed out, there's different challenges here.
Yeah, certainly. I do like the idea of reporting back to you with our successes and where we're able to leverage the synergies with these projects. So I don't mind providing an update in the next few months as to status. And I see Superintendent Nguyen has her hand up as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that on a provincial level, we do communicate on these challenges, and on a monthly basis, we meet with the capital branch of the Ministry of Education and the ADM, and we have already flagged this concern that we may not be able to meet the deadlines on all the projects, since the entire province has been looking to get the same suppliers or the same type of projects, the same type of skills, all at the same time. They are aware, and the communication has started with the federal government as well. I understand it's a bit more complicated, as there's 2 levels of government that would need, and some legislative changes that may need to be enacted. However, we will continue to provide that feedback as Executive Officer that has information for us in terms of the direction of the projects and the progress to completion. We bring them back to that table on a monthly basis, and we will certainly keep the trustees appraised of where we stand in terms of being successful or not to get an extension.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the list is Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair, to Ian Godot. So I'm really excited when I read this report, and I'm sure there are many parents who are also going to be very excited and probably scrolling through the report to see if what improvements their school is going to get. So I guess my question would be, is there any school that did not receive, that should be receiving improvements to the ventilation? So my concern is, were there schools identified that we haven't got to, specifically for the ventilation projects?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair to trustees, of our submitted projects, there were only 2 that weren't accepted. That was Gary Allen High School, provincial school for the deaf, and that was looking at some network upgrades. And I believe we don't actually own that site. I believe it's a provincial site and may have been part of the rationale. The other site that was not approved was Paul A. Fisher, and that was an open concept school looking to build walls as well in those locations. So of our submitted projects, we did quite well, very high success rate. So I think we're well poised, and I'll say through all the other funding opportunities that the government has afforded us, I do believe we've improved ventilation within all of our schools. and certainly supported additional air purification in classrooms where they had limited mechanical ventilation. And so I do think we're in much better shape than we would have been without this government support.
Super to hear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much through the chair to Executive Officer Ian Gaudette. I think my question is very much along the lines of Trustee Reynolds. Specifically, I was going to ask for the purpose of those watching and for those parents that read our board packages, would you please provide a high-level outline of how the school sites for the various projects were identified? I would imagine there's years of research and collection of data that goes into this, but if you could just give us an encapsulated high-level idea as to how these school sites were identified, that would be very helpful for the parents in our community.
Yeah, certainly. Through the chair to all trustees and those watching, I do believe, I wasn't here when this list was created and submitted, but certainly in Waterloo we did something similar where we looked at the gaps and our priority needs within our system, and I do believe our team did the same exercise here in looking at explicitly, I'll say if we looked at ventilation, for example, we looked at where we had mechanical ventilation servicing our schools. But certainly an older build or an older wing of a school may rely on radiant heat, for example, may have a classroom with non-operable windows. And certainly in those cases, those became priorities for us as an action item to either get mechanical ventilation or to look at air purification systems. And so I'll say a similar approach I would have assumed applied to other areas because there is IT funding in here. There's certainly outdoor learning. 56 sites are being provided, accessible outdoor learning opportunities. So just looking at gaps within our system and then prioritization of those, I think is the process that we would have gone through.
Okay, thank you very much. I do not see any more speakers on the speakers list, so I ask my colleagues, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to, I'd like to draw your attention to the next item, 424, which is SEAC Appointment Report 21061. And this was submitted by Superintendent Ruddick. Trustee Garrett, as a voting member of SEAC, would you like to move this item?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
And Vice Chair Harrison, as the other voting member of SEAC, would you like to second?
Sure. Thank you very much.
I'm going to put the recommendation on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the recommended appointment of Rebecca Huron as the HDSB SEAC alternate representative for the Halton Down Syndrome Association. Before I open the floor to debate, Superintendent Ruddick, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you through the chair to trustees. The Halton Down Syndrome Association currently does not have an alternate representative at SEAC, and so we would like to have Rebecca Huron join as the alternate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Trustee Gray is on the speakers list. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much through the chair. And this is not directly related to this, but it is connected to it. I'm very excited to see an alternate come aboard, but I wondered if Superintendent Ruddick could talk to us about, are there any other organizations out there that might be on the list to approach to join our SEAC board? Thank you.
Thank you through the chair to Trustee Gray. Currently, we don't have any associations that are seeking a place on SEAC, but it is certainly a topic of discussion that I've had with a number of SEAC representatives as I've been having meet and greets since I've been appointed to this position. And it has come up by a number of folks. And so it will be something we're looking at. To see if there are other associations that are interested in joining, given that we have space. We can go up to 12. and we aren't there yet. So
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I'm looking to the speakers list. There are no other speakers on the speakers list, so all those in favor. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we are up to communications to the board. First off is item number 5.1, student trustee reports. Trustee Vidyalankara and Trustee Taylor, do you have a report for us this evening?
Yes, we do.
Excellent, go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Trustee Vidyalankara and I hope everyone's doing well and that students and staff enjoyed the break. The Safe Sports Subcommittee has been making tremendous progress. They recently appeared on the Mayor of Oakville show, Oakville Matters, and they will be appearing on the Mayor of Burlington's TV show at the end of the month. The Mayor of Burlington will also be releasing a statement in support of their movement. Furthermore, they have met with MPP Crawford and have meetings lined up with other politicians. Over the past month, the Equity Working Group has also continued to work on their 3 main projects for the year. They continue to meet regularly, collaborate, and hold important discussions and appreciate the work and effort of their members and the guidance of Ms. Vitello. After finishing their first draft of the period poverty letter, addressing provincial funding for menstrual products in Ontario schools, they have received feedback from trustees Joanna Oliver and Leah Reynolds, and now they are working on integrating those comments into an improved draft. They were very pleased to hear the announcement of the HDSB's free menstrual product plan and will make sure to include this in their letter. They are continuing to work on their equity meeting recommendation or guide, which will present suggestions for HDSB schools to implement regular equity meetings into their communities in the next school year. These meetings will focus on collaboration between students, staff, and parents. They plan to have this project finished by June and revised by ourselves and other trustees. Finally, the elementary reps are spearheading a project to put their harmful and discriminatory language protocol in action with a unique and creative video created by students. Although it's in its planning stage, they look forward to completing this project in the coming months and presenting it on our social media to increase outreach within the student body. They want to thank you for your time and support, and they appreciate all the feedback they've received. The Equity Working Group will work hard to complete their goals this year and are happy to help make the board a more equitable community. Additionally, our environmental subcommittee has been doing great work as well. They have recently created a slideshow for students to share environmental initiatives with others. Our mental health subcommittee has been working diligently towards completing a mental health video to broadcast across grades 7 to 12 in the HDSB. This video will aim to inform students about how to support others dealing with mental health issues. For example, this video will highlight seemingly harmless things that people may say in their daily lives that can be offensive toward those struggling with mental illness and how to be more mindful of others. Right now, the script is being finalized and the video should be done within the next week, with filming taking place in the next couple meetings. Future plans include collaborating with other subcommittees such as Equity and Diversity to make a video series with different topics revolving around mental health.
In addition to the video, the subcommittee is also working on creating a mental health poster contest targeted for HDSB students in grades 7 to 12. We believe it will get people to share helpful resources in a catchy way that is beneficial to the entire student body. Subcommittee members have also been reaching out to peers to gain insight as to how we can have as many entries as possible despite students working remotely. The subcommittee is also planning for the winner to receive a prize, which they have yet to determine. The subcommittee also hopes to have the winning posters shared throughout the HDSB digitally to connect our school communities. So moving on to some core Senate updates. Recently, we have been focusing on fulfilling one of our 2021 Student Senate goals, which is to increase awareness about the Senate. This includes improving our outreach on social media in order to reach a greater number of students. Our Senate social media managers, Malaya Fatima and Ruba Shanshal, have been working very hard this past week to create and post more material to our Student Senate Instagram account. The first post was about one of our wonderful executive senators, Isabel Nussbaum. On our Instagram, there is a spotlight post highlighting her experiences and the amazing work Izzy has done as a senator these past 3 years, as well as her work as the Senate Secretary. We hope to continue putting a spotlight on more of our really awesome student senators via this social media Senate Spotlight series. Another social media initiative we have introduced in the past week includes a series highlighting the work done by our graduation subcommittee members. Our first post focused on introducing the co-chairs, members, and the purpose of the subcommittee. We will be continuing with these series, along with other series focused on promoting and recognizing all of the work being done by all of our Senate subcommittees. Yesterday, we held an additional Student Senate meeting for the month of April. This meeting did not run for the usual 3 hours. Instead, we held a 2-hour joint session with both elementary and secondary students. This additional meeting was scheduled to provide an extra opportunity for senators to continue planning each workshop for the upcoming Halton Youth Leadership Symposium. Speaking of HYLS, we are happy to announce that a date has been determined for the event. The Halton Youth Leadership Symposium will be held virtually on Friday, May 28th. We will likely be asking for support on the day of the conference from some trustees, so please keep an eye on your inbox. Our Student Senate Directors of Operations, Anik Dasahi and Julia Rayner-Bebin, have been working very hard on booking guest speakers, figuring out the logistics of hosting hundreds of participants in an online format, and managing each workshop, among many, many other tasks. Recently, they sent out the request for principals to select students from their school to attend the event. We are very excited for HYLS, and we hope this will be a fun and engaging experience for all students. And finally, our next Student Senate meeting will be on Tuesday, April 27th, so next Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. At this meeting, we will be putting forward a number of motions, including a motion to send our Equity Subcommittee's period poverty letter to the Ministry of Education. Trustees will be forwarded a meeting invite, and this should be a pretty packed meeting, so trustees will have a chance to take a closer look at the work the Senate's been doing over the past year. This brings us to the end of our student trustee report. We will share the written report along with some visuals later this evening. Thank you so much, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Wow, that was a jam-packed report. Excellent. There's a lot of great work going on. I commend you both and the Senate for everything you're doing. Wow. I'm going to look to the speakers list to see if there are any questions. I don't see any at this time, but I'm sure I'm sure your colleagues would really appreciate getting that report because there is so much. I couldn't write it down fast enough. So excellent work. Thank you very much. So we will move on now to, our action items for May the 5th. We don't actually have any this evening listed, but that doesn't mean that we won't be here on May the 5th. Sometimes we have items with established criteria that need to come to the board table more than one time. For the first time, it's for information excuse me, and the second time is for actual consideration for approval. So as I said, we don't have any at this time that meet those criteria. We do, however, have 2 items for information this evening. The first is 531, Operational Plan Development, Report 21055. And Associate Director Bogue, go right ahead. Oh, and just a note that this information will be coming back to the board for consideration in June.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This is the operational plan draft for next year. The draft contains intended actions and strategies. We built the plan with optimism that for next year we would be looking at a more normal startup in September. If we're still dealing with modified schedules and heightened health protocols and things like that, we may have to revisit the plan, but we are being optimistic. And so you'll note lots of strategies and actions there. Finally, I would like to just thank all of the senior team. This is a joint effort each year when we pull this together, and all of the superintendents around the virtual table have contributed to this report. And all of us would be happy to answer any questions that trustees have.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to look to the speakers list. I'm talking slowly because I don't want to beat the internet. I don't see any speakers at this time. Oh, I spoke too soon. Trustee Shuttleworth, go right ahead.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Chair. To Associate Director Bogue. I just have a quick question. I was looking through the report, and I was just wondering, so at the very beginning of it, it talks about looking at identifying and eliminating systemic barriers in the board, and it speaks, or the focus is on staff training. I'm just wondering if consideration has been made in looking at including training for our student leaders as well?
Thank you, Trustee Shuttleworth. Through the chair to all trustees, I'm going to look to perhaps Superintendent Etoff, and I see Superintendent Taha has come on as well in terms of addressing that question.
Yes, thanks. Thank you for the question, Trustee Shuttleworth, through the chair. Yes, absolutely. That is something that we need to look at across the organization. We, traditionally automatically think in terms of training. We think of our school administrators, our school leaders. But just the other day, in fact, I met with Superintendent Taha and another of his staff to talk about what training might look like within various different corporate sectors. And obviously, I've had some ongoing conversations with both of our student trustees about the type of learning and support that we can provide to some of our student leaders, which we're absolutely willing to do. It's when it comes to looking at these pieces, we absolutely need to be having everybody on board, everybody on the bus, and that means learning all around from the top to the bottom of the organization.
Superintendent Taha, did you have something to add?
Sure. To further to Superintendent Etoff's comment about the overlap between some of the learning and the capacity building that we do for our staff and how it spills over to our students. Take, for example, the disruption of harmful language training that we have rolled out recently for our staff, and inevitably that's something that students hear about and learn about, be it explicitly or implicitly. In human resources, we've talked about the training that is called bystander intervention training. Essentially, it's the same theme, it's the same concept. It's about disrupting incivility in the workplace or in the classroom, be it language, behaviors, and it's the same themes that don't be a bystander, intervene, because you have the skills to do it, the moral obligation to do it. So those are two things, or one tangible example that we can provide where we're partnering with our FOS superintendents and other departments in terms of how we can make the training that we provide to staff also of relevance and of value to students, even if it's not advertised as such.
Awesome. I noticed that a lot of what you talk about leadership opportunities and referring to the student census, but the training really focuses on staff. And I just was thinking, what a great opportunity to have that student-centered focus to involve them in that training as well. So thank you for your explanation.
Okay, next on the speakers list is Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much through the chair. My question is around the learning and achievement, particularly as it relates to the secondary level. My specific question is that I took notice of that numeracy and literacy remediation opportunities would be given for students both curricularly and co-curricularly, as well as in the summer. My question is, and I would imagine this to be the case, that many of the initiatives that we've had in place over the years around improving literacy achievement would continue, and that though we haven't identified it directly in this, that we would continue, because I think at this point we're talking about remediation opportunities, but maybe not some of the other things that we have in place. Just wanted to have confirmation of that.
Thank you, Trustee Gray. I see Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons is ready to respond.
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Gray, you are correct. All of the good work to date that supports literacy achievement in secondary will continue. You see the focus on remediation because there has been a great deal of concern and discussion this year about gaps in learning and being able to close those gaps when they are discovered. And so there are plans going in the works right now as part of the operational plan to do just that. We will see solid programs that have been in the past continue in the future, as well as some new ones as well.
Do you have a follow-up at all, Trustee Gray?
No, thank you very much. My question has been answered, so thank you very much.
Okay, excellent. There are no more speakers on the speakers list. Thank you very much for this report. And moving on to the next item is the COVID-19 schools update. Trustees, this has been distributed, and I've actually put a link in that document there.
Through your chair, Gerbrands, I'll turn it straight over to Superintendent Blackwell.
Thank you. So as you know, we've returned from our April break to remote learning, and elementary students in virtual schools continued with their learning on Monday. Students that were in physical buildings before the break participated in asynchronous learning Monday and resumed synchronous remote learning yesterday. We know that school staff have distributed technology on Monday to thousands of students who required it. School Programs Department provided more training and support for educators on Monday and throughout this week. And then one of the things to note is that we've seen great progress in the pivot to remote learning, and our staff definitely has done a fabulous job in making that transition, and even much better than we did in January. And in secondary, with similar success, this week is the final week of Quad 3. All key dates regarding mark reporting and report cards remain the same. And then all students have been emailed timetables for Quad 4. I think that went out on Tuesday. Schools are messaging their communities regarding the return of materials from their Quadmester 3 learning courses, and plans are in the works, and they'll be school specific and communicated for distribution of materials for Quad 4, which begins April 26th, should we need to have that happen. Return of students with significant special education needs, elementary students in self-contained life skills and communication classes, as well as secondary students in the Community Pathway Program, continue to be provided the opportunity to learn in person due to their special education needs and challenges with accessing the learning in the remote model. In addition, students with significant special education needs in the regular class who meet the criteria and are unable to access learning in the remote model have also been provided the opportunity to learn in person. We have staff, teachers, educational assistants, administrators, and office staff, as well as custodial staff working in each of these sites to ensure that staff and students are well supported during this period of in-person learning. And we appreciate the support and dedication of our staff during these challenging times. Asymptomatic testing continues. We continue to offer it in our school sites. This week, the testing will be April 24th, which is Saturday, and the following Thursday will be at CKSS for students and staff that are in the Craig Kielburger family of schools. To date, our latest reporting data, and it is available on the ministry website at our school sites that we've offered. We've had 1,704 students and staff access the testing in our schools, and has resulted in 5 confirmed cases. We also know that asymptomatic testing has been available for our staff since a return in January. It's now available for students at local pharmacies. So previously it was only offered to staff, but students are welcome to access that asymptomatic testing as well. Vaccines for staff. So this is great news for us and our staff. Halton Region Public Health is now providing vaccines to our staff who have yet to qualify in other categories. Booking for vaccines opened last Friday, and all of our staff that have booked appointments have access and have signed up for vaccine appointments. So we're very excited that that's happening for our staff. And that's all I have at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Looking to the speakers list. Trustee Shuttleworth, there you are. Go right ahead.
Sorry. Thank you, through your chair. And this might sound like I don't know if it's silly or absurd question. I know in the past, when schools were open, we were told that if public health chose to, they could override the minister's decision to close schools. My question is the reverse the same? So there's been a lot of talk about the importance of being in-person learning as far as mental health. So if public health sees the benefits outweighing the costs, can they do the same thing as far as opening schools and overriding the ministry's decision? This is a question that I was thinking about.
I'll take that question through you, Chair Grabentz, to Trustee Shuttleworth. If the Ministry of Education or the government shuts down schools, they are shut down. Public health cannot override the government. If schools are open, though, for in-person learning, public health can use Section 22 of the Health Promotion Act, Protection and Promotion Act, to close schools. They're the only two bodies that can do it, but public health cannot override the government to reopen schools. And I do want to clarify this because we've had a few notes around this. The schools were, just make sure I get it straight here, hang on. Sorry, Chair Grabentz, go to another question while I pull out my paper on this one, and I'll explain the order that closed the schools this time around.
Okay, I was probably going to ask a question that you were going to, you're jumping to answer. Actually, there's no other speakers on the speakers list, but I was going to ask, so if public health, because we're not currently closed due to a Section 22, that allows the high needs special education students to still be in our schools, but public health could actually compound the current shutdown in our region by actually declaring a Section 22 and closing it. And that would actually include the this special education class, the students that are in the special education high needs classes. I guess this is probably for Superintendent Blackwell.
Thanks through the chair to the chair. The reason that public health would close the schools would be because of a public health reason around COVID, right? So and again, they would do that based on the cases, whether it were in a site or whether it would be across the board. To date, they have not. We've seen 2 cases in which we've had a number of confirmed cases. It's usually, I believe it was River Oaks and Tiger Jeet, where we've chosen to close the school, and public health has said that we can continue with dismissing cohorts if need be, or classes in elementary schools, and then the rest of the school would continue, or the rest of the students would be able to continue to learn. So yes, they could shut down a site. Yes, they could shut down learning. It would be because of an increase in the number of cases that are occurring in our schools, and they would deem that would be the need.
Okay, thank you, Director Miller. Go right ahead.
Yeah, and through you, Chair Grabentz, to all trustees, just to expand on Superintendent Blackwell, just so it's clear to the public, we closed Tiger Jeet Singh and River Oaks due to operational issues. I will remind those that might be watching that public health can close them because of public health reasons. I, as director, cannot close schools for public health reasons. It has to be the Chief Medical Officer of Halton or the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario. But we may close schools. I have the authority to close a school if we have challenges in staffing it, which we did. And hence those schools were closed. We had so many students and staff off. But to go back to Trustee Shuttleworth's comments or question, the schools this time have not been shut by a public health order, by Public Health Halton or Public Health Ontario, which would be Section 22 of the Health Protection and Promotion Act. The schools this time are closed under Regulation 8220, which is made under the Reopening Ontario, which is the full name is Reopening Ontario, a Flexible Response to COVID-19 Act 2020, which states Section 3.1, 3-1, schools and private schools within the meaning of the Education Act shall not provide in-person teaching or instruction. So public health could not overrule that. This is an order by the Ontario government. They also further ordered that students with special needs be provided the opportunity to come to in-person school under the same act. So I hope that clarifies it a little bit.
It does. And then again, just for public awareness, we are bound by what the minister tells us, correct?
Absolutely. This is because this is a regulation, or they make it, because it's a regulation or an order, we are absolutely bound by it. Defiance of those orders is defiance of the law and breaking the law. And I don't think it's becoming of a school board to break the law.
All right, thank you very much.
And just further to just a clarification, Director Miller, I've had a few emails saying that there's some sort of appeal process for closing schools. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, yes, I've had the same emails, Chair Grabentz, and they are appealing under, they have argued that we can appeal it under the Health Protection and Promotion Act, that we are entitled to appeal it on using Section 22, because the schools have been closed, Section 22. So if Chief Medical Officer closes the schools due to Section 22 of the Health Promotion and Protection Act, the Board of Trustees and the Director have the opportunity to appeal that decision to Public Health around that. However, that's not the order that these schools have been closed under. They've been closed under the Reopening Ontario, a Flexible Response to COVID-19 Act 2020. So we're unable to appeal that decision, even if it was the will of the board or the Director of Education to appeal it. We can only appeal a Section 22 closure.
Thank you for that clarification. Trustee Rocha, you are on the list.
Yeah, through the chair. Wondering if you can provide an explanation as to why April 19th was offered to staff as a prep day, and it was a modified day for students, as opposed to when we returned from the winter break, no prep day was offered, or when a classroom has to go into quarantine and there is no prep day for the staff. So just wondering why a prep day this time around.
Through you, Chair Grabentz, to Trustee Rocha. One clarification, when staff returned on January 4th, it was not a full prep day, but it was a partial full day. Teachers were required to check in with their students in the morning, take attendance, and check in with them to see how they were doing. Then they provided asynchronous assignments for them until later on in the day. And that afforded those teachers to do some prep for maintaining virtual schools, which is what they did. Now, this time, teachers were required to do a check-in in the morning and then provide an asynchronous for the entire school day in the elementary panel only. Secondary did not do that. So there's some reasons for this, and I'll speak about the primary reason at the end. Teachers had 2 weeks off over Christmas. The closure of the schools for the virtual days happened on the very first day of the winter break. That meant there were 2 weeks for them to prepare. During the spring break, the announcement for the closure of the schools and pivoting to virtual was on the Monday. Teachers now had 4 days as opposed to 2 weeks to get ready. In addition, from a teacher perspective, our teachers have been working extremely hard. All teachers in this province and EAs have been working extremely hard. And I will make an editorial remark here. I, for one, do not understand why the announcement of pivoting to virtual occurred on the first Monday of the spring break. What were the conditions that changed from Wednesday and Thursday of the previous week to the Monday that caused the announcement to be made on a Monday? Had the announcement been made the week prior, we could have been prepared. And there's a reason for the primary reason why we gave that day. The same actually happened in the winter break. It was made on the very first day of the winter break as opposed to the week prior. I am not privy to those conversations that go on at that level, but certainly that put everybody in a difficult spot. Because of that, teachers didn't really have the opportunity, because they were expecting to come back to even though we did put out a note before, be prepared that we could go to virtual. Teachers had left some of their technology at the schools and so on, and that they would have been able to pick them up and prepare. So from that perspective, from a teacher perspective, I'm going to say this, it was a humane thing to do for our staff so that they could take some days off without preparing. However, the primary reason is for equity of service to our students. Many of our students did not have technology. Many of our students left technology in the schools. We would have had a real mixed bag of students in class on a virtual environment, and those that didn't have technology, they didn't have the resources, they didn't do anything. So I, for one, as director, think, well, part of my role is to be equitable. So if I use a concrete example, a class of 25 kids, we might have had 10 kids in that class not prepared for Monday because they did not have technology, they were not set up to do virtual. So do we expect our staff to move forward and then start going there? I'm sure the trustees would have heard about the inequity of that as well as I would have heard about that as well, that, you know, we weren't ready and so on. However, an asynchronous assignment was provided, which students could work on, and there's value in students working independently, asynchronous, and so on. So that those are the primary reasons that we had that day. Many school boards, in fact, I believe most school boards in this province provided the same day. Some boards provided 2 days. We did not provide 2 days, but we did provide that day because it's challenging enough for everyone. Let's make it right on the Tuesday as opposed to putting everybody, students especially, and staff under immense pressure for that Monday morning. There was one other comment I was going to make about it. Shoot, forget what it was. So anyway, those are the primary reasons that we did so. And I think it was the right thing to do. I think it supported our staff and it supported our many families. And indeed, I was in a school today in which there are students in the Community Pathways program. The staff all thanked me for having that day to get ready for the students to be prepared and so on. Oh, I know the final point that I was going to make. You asked why, when there's a class closure or a school, a class closure, teachers are expected to pivot the very next day. So if public health contacts Superintendent Blackwell and says that a class at one of our schools, at school A, is public health, we have to close the class, the teacher can immediately switch to pivot or pivot to virtual. It's still challenging for our staff. It's still challenging for our kids. It's not without its challenges. It's as seamless as they've been able to make it, but it's still not without its challenges. And that's one class. We were now talking about a whole system. We had 33,000 students in brick and mortar schools in our elementary panel. And on that, if we all had to pivot on that one day, you're talking about a move of 33,000 and thousands of teachers. A single class, it's still a challenge, but it's not as great a challenge. And you don't have, it's easier for a principal to identify 2 or 3 kids in a class who might not have that technology as opposed to 200 in the school. So those are the reasons. I know some people were critical of it. Some people were supportive of it. Some staff were. But these are the decisions you make in these times. But I would go back to, we were told on the Monday, the first Monday of the spring break, that we were pivoting to virtual the following Monday. That's a challenge for everybody. So.
And I will just throw commentary that this seems to harken back to the letter that this board sent to the minister early January, requesting that they have an educator as a resource when making decisions that impact school operations. Obviously, they have not done that. We haven't heard a response on that. So we can just assume by the decision-making timelines that they continue to use that they have not taken our advice. Anyways, moving to the speakers list, Trustee Garrett.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Superintendent Blackwell. I've been receiving a number of phone calls and emails from educational staff, specifically those in working in a spec ed department with special needs children. And the concern is their safety. And yes, they are going to sometime get vaccinated, but they probably should have been on the top of the list as opposed to the, in the mix. But anyway, that's my own editorial. My question to you is, with the variants and the risk and the spread so quickly with the variant, have the protocols, safety protocols, changed at all within those classrooms?
Through the chair to Trustee Garrett, thank you for the question. I think one of the things that you pointed out was the difference now is the variant of concern, and it has increased the concern definitely of staff and of families, right? That being said, we've asked this question with public health, and our protocols that we have in place have continued to keep our staff safe. Yes, it's more transmissible, but our IPAC measures, which are infection prevention and control measures, still work against the variant. So our PPE that's provided for our staff, our ventilation in our classrooms, especially, we put that in January. We made sure that students that were in the building. We have increased another layer in terms of students that are in elementary life skills and communication classes. Previously, they were not required to do daily screening, but they are now required to do that. We also know that staff are taking kids outside. I've been in a couple of schools this week, and with it, maybe not so much with the snow today, but the outdoors continues to be one of those pieces. But our IPAC measures that we have in place have continued and will continue to keep our staff safe. The way that we're providing them with the medical grade masks and face shields. We also know that students have gained a lot of experience in the protocols in terms of physical distancing and working in those environments, and have more space to be spread out throughout the school when there's not as many students in the building. So we're very, public health is also very supportive of our staff being in the building and working with the same protocols that they had in place. And we trust that, our numbers, I believe, I think we've had one confirmed case in one of our contained classrooms since I took the portfolio. So we know that the practices that are being used are effective. and keeping our kids and staff safe. So thank you for the question.
Okay, there's no more questions except I have just one, and it's about the asymptomatic testing numbers that you provided. And I was just wondering, are those 5 cases that were identified, do you know if they were distinct cases, or were they part, 3 from a family? Because I know parents can also get tested in this program. Just wondering.
Through the chair to the chair, I do not know. That's probably about 6 weeks of testing, though, I believe early on, and that's cumulative. And I believe early on it was 2 or 3 in the first couple of reports. So if anything, it would be maximum of 2 in a family.
Okay, that's good information.
Just given the number change cumulatively, right?
Yes, that makes sense. Okay.
We're not provided that detail, right? We would not be provided.
That's true. Sorry, I forgot there would be privacy issues around that, so we would not know. Okay. Okay, so there are no more questions on the speakers list. I'm going to call a 5-minute recess, because though it looks like there's not a lot left on our agenda, some of those might be big ticket items. So we will see you at 8:35. Thank you. Okay, so we are back from recess. And we are up to 5.4, which is notices of motion. Looking to the speakers list to see if there are any notices of motion. Seeing none, we're up to the director's report. Director Miller, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Grabentz. I have basically three kind-ish, biggish, and then a couple just information ones. The first one I'm going to turn to is we have just started a staff census, and I will turn to Superintendent Taha to explain about what we're doing as a board and why we're doing it, which is more important.
Thanks, Director Miller. Through you, Chair Grabentz, to our board trustees. I'm very excited to share this news with you. Jesus, sorry about that. About our staff census on Monday, April 19th, we launched our first comprehensive staff census. At least to my knowledge, it's our first. The census is a census exercise collecting demographic data and also a survey in some ways. So it includes questions regarding staff identity, example, ethnicity, race, gender identity, and those kinds of things, as well as perceptual questions that are also related to the multi-year plan, questions about safety, a sense of belonging, an equitable and inclusive workplace. The questions are grounded within the Human Rights Code, so they're questions that survive the law, as they should. And they were also developed through a partnership with the Anti-Racism Secretariat and the Ministry of Ed. Basically, the census will allow us to, I've said this before, it gives us a scorecard of what we've done thus far in terms of our work in increasing and promoting representation in our workforce and the gaps that we need to close. It'll give us a broader and more in-depth understanding of our employees and what our workforce looks like, including areas of similarities and differences. Also, the data will provide us a picture of who's reflected in the HDSB workforce, and help us more effectively identify barriers and eliminate barriers for our staff, and our students inevitably will benefit from that. I said the census opened on Monday, April 19th. It's open for approximately 3 weeks. We're giving staff the time to complete the census. We've asked our administrators to provide time during the professional development day this Friday, as well as, if possible, during staff meetings. A perfect response rate would be roughly 11,000 responses, according to our HR data. And 2 days into the census launch, I'm happy to say that we're closing in on 3,000 completed responses. So that's really good news. That's again basically an overview of what the census is, what the census aims to achieve, and again, it's not only about collecting identity-based data, but it's also about perceptual questions. What do our staff think of the workplace? And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Looking to the speakers list, Trustee Shuttleworth, go right ahead.
I was earlier this time. Thank you. Through the chair to Superintendent Taha. You talked about this being a scorecard. What will you use the results to do?
Go ahead, sorry.
That's it. That's my question.
Through you, Chair Grabentz, to Trustee Shuttleworth. The results again will give us a picture of what our workforce looks like in terms of representation. Our multi-year plan, our way forward equity plan, moving forward equity plan, has set some targets and some objectives, aspirational goals, and numerical goals with respect to increasing representation in our workplace. In terms of certain communities and identities that are underrepresented in various layers of the organization. The data will tell us where those gaps are. We have a sense that certain identities are perhaps represented in certain layers of the organization, certain job classifications, to the exclusion of other job classifications, in particular our administrative staff, our management staff, and at the senior admin level. That's anecdotal evidence. It also, the data, the perceptual data, will build on the baseline data that we've collected 3 years ago from the Respectful Workplace data that we've collected. We've implemented certain measures and interventions in place in terms of training, awareness, capacity building, not only for managers and supervisors, but also for our staff. And we want to see how well we've done. Have we moved the needle in the right direction or not? Those are really key things that we think we can use the data to inform our actions. So yeah, that would be two of the key things that we would be hoping to achieve from this data.
Okay, so I don't know if it's a follow-up or
go right ahead.
More information. So with that, so you're identifying the groups that are the other underrepresented. Are we also looking at the support networks that our board has to ensure that the differing people feel supported and included within the wider board?
Through you, Chair Gerbens, to Trustee Shuttleworth. Some of the perceptual questions that we're asking actually zero in on those themes. At the end of the day, the diversity or inclusion in the workplace goes beyond, complexion or representation. It's really about feeling safe to voice those perspectives, those differing opinions, divergent opinions. The questions we ask are questions such as, do you feel comfortable dissenting, so to speak? Do you feel comfortable bringing a different perspective to your superiors, to your supervisors? Do you feel that your voices are heard? And again, we can do cross-analysis in terms of those who give us a positive scorecard, let's say, and cross-reference that with their identities. And you're absolutely correct. During the Respectful Workplace exercise that we've launched 2 years ago, the report card wasn't so good from our female employees. The survey didn't ask specifically only about questions of racism and discrimination on the basis of race. It asked questions with respect to all other identities. We didn't do so well, relatively speaking, with our from a gender perspective. Our workforce is predominantly female, and some of our female staff were not feeling safe in the workplace. We hope that we've done better. We've also didn't do a good job, again, with employees who identify as employees with disabilities or abilities. So again, it's really about looking at the needs and the perspectives and the feedback of all identities. It's not only about how we're doing with respect to anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism. It's about how we're doing with all of those identities. So that's part of what the survey will tell us. And again, it's connected to the multi-year plan.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker on the speakers list is Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you to Superintendent Taha. I'm really pleased to see that we've already got the wheels going on this. We only just passed the multi-year plan a few months ago, and the great strides and the direction that we're moving to ensure an equitable workplace, really, it's really comforting to see this happening so quickly. I'm wondering when the results are in, will we get a fulsome written report going through the various metrics and data and building up a path forward on this?
Thank you, Trustee Collard. Through you, Chair Gerbens, to the rest of the trustees. I'm glad that you pointed this out, Trustee Collard. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize and give credit to the various departments that made this happen so quickly. You're absolutely right. PPM 165 required school boards to collect census data. It gave us till 2023 to do it. And we really began this work, I would say, a month or two with respect to staff census. The work of the Equity Department, Superintendent Ita, Dr. Jula Moa, Assistant Principal Mary Marshall and their staff, the work of my HR team, and also the work of Dr. Rosanna Bishagia, who's, I have to say, has been absolutely instrumental in making this a reality. So thank you for bringing that up, Trustee Collin. Yes, absolutely. I believe we've pointed this out, that we will be bringing back a report that brings to the Board of Trustees an executive summary of some kind, data analysis with disaggregation that tells us exactly what our representation looks like, what our workforce is telling us. I think, don't quote me on this one, working backwards, we think we can have something for our Board of Trustees maybe late August, early September. It could be sooner, but that's something that we'll have to circle back internally to get a sense of where we can get this data ready. Perhaps Associate Director Bo can comment on that, or Director Miller.
Thank you, Superintendent Taha. I don't really have any comment. I think you said it. We hope to get this back and use this information, of course, share with all trustees. But we also want to share what we're doing about the information as well that we're provided. So we would need to, as Trustee Shuttleworth had mentioned. So we haven't done a timeline yet, but we will have one, and we can discuss that and get a timeline to trustees and say, here's when we're bringing it back, and here's what we're doing about what we've uncovered, I guess, is a way to describe it.
Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this.
Okay, thank you. There are no more speakers on the speakers list for this particular director's report topic, so go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Grabens. As trustees are aware, although last year was a different year, last school year was a different year near the end, but in normal years, we would be bringing trustees a first look at the long-term accommodation plan, or LTAP, at this point for approval sometime in June. Last year it was delayed due to COVID and the delay in GSNs and so on. Unfortunately, we're going to have to delay it again, and I will ask General Manager Thibault to speak about why there's a delay and when trustees can get to see the LTAP.
Thank you, Director Miller. So through you, Chair Grabens, yes, as Director Miller had pointed out, we're looking at another timeline that's probably reflective of what was done as part of the 2019 long-term accommodation plan, and looking for a fall approval. Similarly, we'd be looking to hopefully provide you with a copy of the draft long-term accommodation plan before the school year is up. So at least it gives us the summer months to have some review of it and provide some feedback with the community later on. One of the main things that has caused delay with the production of the long-term accommodation plan is primarily due to the release of the capital priorities from the Ministry of Education. We were not expecting a spring release, as it were, for submission at the end of May. So this is overlapping entirely with our typical long-term accommodation plan production, which typically I would say between the months of, April and May, we would be in the production mode of getting everything ready. We have since shifted gears since the release of the memorandum at the end of March in preparing all of our business cases for submission at the end of May, and we'll be ramping up that production as well to start writing out the business cases. So that's one of the predominant reasons as to why the long-term accommodation plan is being delayed, so we can focus our energy specifically on getting those capital priorities business cases completed. We hope that in subsequent years that, again, we go back to our standard timelines, which is to, get a copy in and around this time to trustees for the preliminary review and eventual approval in June. So hopefully we're not met with the same challenges next year as well. I'm happy to take any other further clarification questions on this one, and maybe some expected timelines or processes or anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a speaker on the speakers list. Trustee Collard, go right ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Fred. So isn't the LTAP important in putting together the capital priorities? How do you put together capital priorities without the LTAP?
Through Chair Gerbrands, it's a good question. Yes, it is a document that helps us in developing those capital priorities. That said, we are well aware of where some of the hotspots are in terms of our needs for additional pupil places, essentially. So this round of capital priorities is really grounded on addressing a lot of the growth needs at the board. We do have some priorities that were unfunded as part of the last round, which we'll be presenting as part of the report upcoming in May 5th. So that's what we're looking at, is where do we know that there are pressures coming down the line, and we're well aware of where they are. So typically, yes, we would identify them as part of the long-term accommodation plan, but they are relatively already identified in the existing 2019 LTAP, and we do expect a few others that are coming to light based on existing growth needs.
Thank you. So I would anticipate that the LTAP will reflect the report that you submit then. Thank you.
It certainly will.
Okay, there are no other speakers on the speakers list. Director Miller, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gerbrands. This is a quick one, but it's a good news story. And, you know, I'm putting it in the middle of the other ones. We are always talking about business. As you know, this has been a really difficult year for many, our students, staff, etc. And it's also been a very difficult year for those in organizations and non-government organizations, which often work together with our schools to raise funds, raise awareness about particular issues. One of those is the Terry Fox Foundation. For almost 40 years, this school board has been participating, and its schools have been participating in Terry Fox runs in honor of Terry Fox to raise money for cancer research. The amount of money this schools across Canada have raised in those 40 years for cancer research in Terry Fox's name is $800 million. Not an insignificant amount of money. This board has done very well in its students, and despite the challenges of doing it this past September, our school board, well, I shouldn't say our school board, I will say the schools in our school board raised $76,397 towards the Terry Fox Foundation, with virtual runs and virtual bike rides and running on treadmills, etc. And one of our schools, and Trustee Rocha will be glad to hear this, is 16th in Ontario, and that's EJ James. They raised just over $7,600. So I felt it was important that trustees are aware of that, and it speaks to the great work that our staff does, the parents in our community, and of course the kids, who are the ones who raised the money. So back to business, though. I just want trustees to be aware we have almost completed a memorandum of understanding with the Halton Learning Foundation. As trustees are aware that the Halton Learning Foundation is becoming a completely arm's length organization from the Halton District School Board. Its only recipient of their charitable donations is the Halton District School Board, but we are almost completed the memorandum of understanding, and we will be bringing that to the Board of Trustees either at the next board meeting or the second board meeting in May for them to have a look and ask questions, etc., and so on. We are also almost completed a memorandum of understanding with an organization called Oakville Prep. Oakville Prep is an elite basketball program, and they currently have students in one of our schools in Oakville. And the students from this program often go on to NCAA scholarships and or professional players in the NBA and or Europe. So they've been in our school one of our schools for a couple of years, and we've kind of been working, but we're formalizing it all, and we will also bring that MOU to the Board of Trustees in either the next board meeting or the one after. The last thing I want to, unless there's questions on any of those charity events, or just for information, really. The last one I want to talk about is the new Elsie McGill High School in Milton. If trustees recall, Superintendent Newton brought a plan A and a plan B because of delays in construction. And I do want to qualify it a little bit. The delays are multifaceted. There were delays in approval of getting approval to start the construction. There were delays in approving going out to tender. Those are our ministry approvals that were a challenge. There was a delay in the capital priorities list in getting approval for this school as well. So those were some of the delays. In addition, there have been construction delays, such as supply chain delays because of COVID, but also supply chain delays because of tariffs that the previous American administration had imposed upon Canada around steel and aluminum. So there's been a number of delays. Superintendent Newton had brought a plan A and a plan B. We were hopeful that plan A would mean that the students could be on site at the school for semester 1 of next year. That is unlikely. I also have Superintendent Gadet, who will talk about the technical reasons as to why we may not be able to do that, or we will not be able to do that. And we also have the principal of LC McGill to come in and talk about how he will address that with the students and how he will work with the students and the staff at the school. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Newton first, then Superintendent Gadet, and then we'll ask Principal Dooley to come in with his comments.
Thank you, Director Miller, and through the chair. We, as Director Miller has stated, we are looking at opening this school in February of 2022. So first semester, we would be looking at housing our students in a temporary accommodation, i.e. portables. And we are looking at putting the portables on the site of Milton District High School. Plan B is basically a school within a school, wherein the principal, Dooley, who is on call here now as well, will house his students in these cottages on the property of Milton District. And by doing so, it also allows students to have access to some of the resources that they have at a school, such as the infrastructure of the fields, of washrooms inside a building, the library in Milton, as well as the gymnasiums and perhaps some of the art rooms as well. The decision not to put these portables on the LC McGill site in itself is that we felt that at this point, in terms of the stages of the construction, that would perhaps not be a safe place to put the portables, albeit they would be to the side. The second reason is that we would not have washrooms on the first floor of the building ready for students and staff to be able to use, and particularly a main office focus. And the third reason is that because of the construction pieces, that fire alarm systems would have to have walkthrough pieces throughout the day. So in doing this, we believe that a school within a school at Milton District is the option that we need to go with for first semester. We understand that through Michael Walafont that the portables have already been ordered so that we can get busy at placing them as soon as possible, so that the staff and students will be able to create those as their home. And we also believe that there's good relationships with the admin, both at Milton District and the admin of LC McGill, that they will work hand in hand. This practice has been used before, as we've seen in our board in Milton, when we saw Martin Street be accommodated at Boyne. We've also seen when we were opening up Viola Desmond, that Viola Desmond was actually housed at 3 sites as school within a school. So our principals are well versed in what that means in terms of accommodating student needs. And we do believe that this is the best option to avail. The other reason in the boundary reviews is that these grade 9 students, and we're talking about 150 in total, would in fact be going to Milton District if we had not done a boundary review. So in many ways, many of these students will already have older siblings that are at Milton District already, so that for families, this seems less disruptive as we gear up to introduce the school in February 2022. And I will turn it over to Principal Dooley to talk about plans in terms of communication and how this will work in the ground.
Sorry, I just would like Superintendent Gadet first to talk about the actual technical reasons. Sorry,
Okay.
Superintendent Newton.
Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. And I think, the technical reason, the biggest one, as Superintendent Newton alluded to, is safety. That's my primary concern for all staff and students. And certainly having them on an operating construction site is worrisome, especially to the scale that the site is still under construction. It's not like we're necessarily all that close to occupancy yet. And so with that, we did explore options with trying to enable the washroom facilities and life safety systems to get completed to a substantial degree so that we could occupy the school. That unfortunately was not, we're not at a point where that was supported by chief building officials. And that's their role, to ensure that we can safely occupy our facilities. I think one of the problems with this is just the level of dust and dirt that's going to be within the facility as we complete drywall and finishes. There's a fair bit of dust that circulates in the space, and if we activate the life safety systems, it basically wreaks havoc and makes the alarms go off. So with that, other options like fire watches become convoluted and troublesome and a burden for staff, quite frankly, because that's not their core function when they're in the building and during normal operations. And so the last piece was washrooms, and the complexity around the washrooms was that we were hoping that we would have first floor washrooms available, but certainly, again, we're not there. So that looked like portable solutions for washroom facilities, which I don't think is ideal, even though they have come a long way. Certainly, if we can support them at another location with a school within a school model, looking out for everyone's safety and best interest, that was our preference in terms of our recommendation going forward. Thank you.
Principal Dooley?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Gerbents, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I just want to let the board know that the staff of LC McGill has been planning how to open in portables since the board report of November of 2020. And so we most recently have been purchasing equipment and furniture for September that would reflect operating out of portables, and also some creation of specialized classroom areas, I think specifically around science, and getting equipment that would allow those students to have valuable experiential learning and conduct experiments in that portable area, and not requiring the services of a full-blown science lab. I also think about our technological education portables and purchasing hand tools and small power equipment that would work alongside computer-based design work and allow those students to have a fulsome technological experience. I would also think that creating this temporary home, school within a school at Milton District does have many benefits, and Superintendent Newton did outline many of those. I would also add to her list of school facilities that were certainly available at Milton District and not at the 1410 Bronte site, a cafeteria, and having a place for students to gather and socialize at lunch is critical for teenagers, and certainly coming out of a COVID world, that opportunity is very, very important and something that they're probably looking greatly forward to. I will be working very closely with the Milton District admin. I've established an office there, and I work very closely with them already, but to ensure that we have as much access as we can for those facilities for our students. I'd also think that being located at Milton District provides several environmental advantages that we wouldn't have at the LC McGill site at the time. It is adjacent to Brian Best Park, which has sporting fields and grassy areas that we can certainly use. And there's a large forested area immediately adjacent to the Milton District site. And I think of art classes and science classes going in there and doing field work and field study. And there are no forests right now in close and easy proximity to Milton, to the Bronte site. And then finally, I look at the Sports Center John Tonelli. That is an easy walking distance that our students should be able to access and provide extra to their programming. So obviously, we would all prefer to be occupying the building fully on the first day. That's not going to happen. But what I want to say and assure the board is that our staff is committed to making our temporary, and it is temporary, school within a school, a thoroughly engaging and welcoming community for all. That started a few weeks ago when almost every one of our teaching staff volunteered to undergo Link Crew training. It shows their dedication to the students, and I want to thank the school program department for their support of that initiative. I also would suggest that, as one can see now, we're starting to work on the branding of the school. We've selected our colors, orange and navy, blue and white, and we'll be sharing potential logos with our students and parents tomorrow morning for their input and feedback on what really brands the school. So ultimately, this is not the ideal situation, but I do think that a little bit of the adversity, which is what this is a temporary time, will make that move to our permanent facility even sweeter when we get there in semester 2. Thank you, Chair Gerbens.
And Chair Gerbens, I would just, I want to thank Principal Dooley for the work he's doing with the staff and Superintendent Newton, who's been shepherding this through. It's been a challenge, and I apologize to trustees that we do not have a written report at this time. Superintendent Newton will be preparing a written report, so this is in the written record for the next board meeting. But this was only determined Monday afternoon because the flux of these situations are challenging, to say the least, and it says a lot about the staff that they've been able to resolve this so quickly. So there will be a written report for trustees to have at the next report, at the next board meeting. And now I'll turn it back to you, Chair Gerbens, for questions. Any of the 3 people on this can take the questions, and I think Superintendent Nagoy is prepared for a question from Trustee Garrett.
Okay, thank you. Looking to the speakers list, I see first off is Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Principal Dooley, I believe. I was just wondering how you selected the colors, what's the meaning of them, and if you have any insights about how you're developing the logo, because I think both of them will be really great foundational pieces for building the culture of your school.
Thank you, and through the chair to Trustee L. Harrison. In Halton, all sports organizations are run by the Halton Secondary School Athletic Association, and they have a list of all of the colors of all of the schools in our board. And so any new school has to create a scheme that does not conflict with other schools. So there were certain colors that we certainly could not choose right away. I think about the green and gold of Craig Kilberger, or the blue of Milton District. Certainly those are ones we wanted to stay away from as our primary color. And then we selected a few, had some local companies come up with some mock-ups of uniforms, and I sent those out to our staff and also our students and parents for their feedback, and received quite a number of submissions around what they liked, what they didn't like. And out of that process, we settled on orange as the main color. It certainly is unique. And in many cultures, it is seen very highly as well. And so it is something that I think that when we go to any large event, you're going to be able to pick out our athletes right away because we are going to stand out and be proud. And that is something that I'm really looking forward to with the color scheme. In terms of the logo really starts with the name of the school. And so we couldn't do any of the work until a couple weeks ago when you all selected this name for us. Thank you very much for that name. We then look at things that make sense in connection to that person or the school, or alliterations. So I think about Boyne Public School. They're known as the Boyne Bears. So with Elsie McGill being so integral to the war effort and the creation of the Hawker Hurricanes, we're going with the Hurricanes as the name of our school teams. And that then created a sort of ideas around the logos. And so those are the logo samples that we'll be sharing with the staff and the parents and students tomorrow morning. I have an email ready to go. I wanted for this meeting to be over before I sent that email out for their feedback. And that's something that was being driven by staff at the school in connection with the communication department of the Halton District School Board.
Hey, that sounds amazing. Thank you very much for, I hope I didn't ask you to do a scoop here, but that's awesome. And the first thing that I thought of when I saw orange was also Orange Shirt Day. And I think that it's a great opportunity also to tie into the board's, one of the board's key commitments in the multi-year plan around truth and reconciliation. So I think that, you know, for that and for all of the other reasons that you have outlined, I just want to say thank you very much. I'm excited to see what the logo and all of that will look like when it comes together. Thanks.
Okay, next on the speakers list is Trustee Garrett.
Thank you. I have a few questions, so I don't mind jumping back on afterwards. The first question that I would like to ask through you, Chair, to Superintendent Newton, and if I would be remiss from my community if I didn't ask this question. We're looking at doing a school within a school and using the site of MD. Our community is going to ask, why aren't we using the former EC Drury site? Because it also has fields, it also has you know, a place where our students could eat together, et cetera, et cetera. It also has washrooms, et cetera, and it would be separate from the MD students. So I'll go with that first question, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Trustee Garrett, through the chair. We have explored the use of EC Drury for a number of schools, including when we needed a place for Viola, and we also needed a place for Martin Street. In looking at the annex of EC Drury, it is very tired. It needs a lot of revisions and renovations before even moving in. So that's one piece of EC Drury that we would say is not very warming. The other piece that we know, these children are all coming from schools that are new. So they're all new schools. And then to put them into an older facility that needs a lot of renovations to even begin is an issue. EC Drury also is not equipped as a school any longer. So the first floor in particular is a welcome center. It's meeting spaces. And the second floors we're not using anymore either. And we rent those spaces as well. So that would cost money to rent. So in essence, there isn't the cafeteria and a warm feeling for school. We're really feeling the vibrancy of a school, as Principal Dooley has pointed out. Being able to sit in the cafeteria at Milton District has been redesigned to almost be like a barista. It's not a dine and dash cafeteria any longer. So it has a really positive feel to it. And we're thinking that these students would find that to be able to call that home better than EC Drury at this point. But it would be a matter of cost. So to Trustee Garrett's, it's a matter of cost. We have to rent the space at EC Drury if we wanted to use that. And in all honesty, in touring, particularly the annex, would be a fair amount of money that would need to be put in there before we could even start moving furniture in those spaces.
Follow up, please.
Go right ahead.
I guess I probably didn't make myself clear, and I apologize for that. My thinking was putting the portables that we're going to put at MD on the blacktop of EC Drury. And that's sort of where I was thinking. And just then using the inside facilities, the minimal amount of facilities that we might need there.
And through the chair to Trustee Garrett's, that's a novel idea. We looked at the possibility of doing that, keeping in mind that, again, we don't have the space, we don't have the cafeteria, we don't have a library, we have no gyms that would be able to be used. The Trillium School has access to those pieces that we wouldn't be able to use. So in essence, you're really looking at a portable city, if you like, without really accessing the pieces inside other than washrooms.
Can I just add something there too, Chair Gerbens? The other challenge with that is we don't own that property. And so we'd be putting portables on a property that we do not own. Sorry, through you, Chair Gerbens, to Trustee Garrett. Whereas when it's on Milton District, it is our property. And some of those portables may actually stay on that property. Unlikely, but they could as Milton grows as well, Milton District grows. So it poses a particular challenge to put them there. The other aspect of this is once the students move into LC McGill, there is no rush to move the portables off of Milton District. If we need to keep them there, we can keep them there. We will have that issue with EC Drury once the students are gone. There would be an expectation to move all the portables off that site, and we would be looking for sites to put them and store them, etc., and so on. So Superintendent Newton's explained the complexity. I don't have to add.
Okay, Trustee Garrett, do you have any other questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, to Superintendent Ngoy. This is going to impact, obviously, financially. And so what are the costs? What are the costs of putting portables over at MD and then eventually maybe moving them or not? But likely we're going to have to move them at some point. So what do they cost to put them on and take them off? And also, we would then, I suspect, have to provide transportation for all of these students. So what is that going to cost? Is there any recourse to the with the construction company for being late again? Who's footing the bill on all of this?
Thank you, through you, Chair Gerbens, to Trustee Garrett. Thank you for that question. It certainly has a few aspects that I wanted to address. The delay has, as Director Miller had mentioned earlier, had many reasons as well, from the approval, permits, etc., and not necessarily just construction delays. The short answer is we are footing the bill for those costs. However, if we look at transportation, for example, we're able to use certain efficiencies and routes that are the buses that are already on the road. So I don't expect that will be a significant cost. Also, some of those students may have required transportation regardless to get to the new school. So therefore, it's not an entirely new incremental cost, but there will be some transportation costs, inefficiencies. I just don't expect them to be material at this point. We are still building the transportation budget for next year, which is something that we're finalizing over the next few weeks. So I don't have an actual number right now, but it would be certainly offset by route efficiencies and keeping in mind some of those students would have generated additional buses or routes, whether they would be directed to one school or the other. With regards to temporary accommodations, it certainly adds up quite quickly. On one hand, the costs are increasing by adding the portables, the infrastructure, the permits, etc. On the other hand, we are getting funded for portable lease and portable moves. The funding does tend to be on a 3-year average and about a year behind, but we will be recovering some of those costs. Using it on our property, we do have the control in terms of where the needs are, and within Milton, we always need more portables. So we don't have a doubt that those portables will be put to good use in the future as well. They may be moved again, but it will generate funding to offset most of those costs. But at the end of the day, any incremental costs that are not funded for that will be covered by our bottom line, by the board.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you very much through you, Madam Chair. I'm curious, what is the current occupancy at Milton District High School? Is it under occupied? Is it over occupied? Where are we with that? And what is going to be the impact on the students that are actually scheduled for Milton District? And it's in many ways just a question for information because quite frankly, we don't have a lot of choice on this. I appreciate everything you've done to make us comfortable with it. This is what we have done before. Schools within the schools, when we were building a Scarbon View and P.O. Robertson, it's the first time with a high school, and I recognize that there's no elegant solution to this, and this is not what you would have wanted to have happen, any of you on staff, but it's the reality that we're in, and I do appreciate that you are doing everything you can to make this work, but I am wondering what the impact on Milton District will be.
And through the chair to Trustee Daniele, currently right now, the projection is 1,250 students at Milton District High School. If we, and again, anticipating what does September look like, if we go to a 4-period day, we are looking at possibly reintroducing a quad model again. We're in discussions about the possibility of that. So currently at Milton District, there are 5 portables on site for the students of Milton District, and we anticipate that they will be continued to be used there. So the rooms at Milton District are being used. There is no empty space inside the building either. So in terms of adding another 150 students to the 1,250 that are there, we're looking at roughly 1,500 students that are at Milton District High School.
And how many portables are you looking at adding?
We're looking at adding anywhere from 9 to 12 portables. And they would be positioned as a school on the upper field level of that school. So they would be positioned together so that they could interact that way with their staff and students.
May I ask a question of clarity, please? Could you please help us explain why that might necessitate going to the quad model?
I'm sorry, this particular decision tonight is not going to necessitate going into the quad model. We are being preemptive in our thinking to wonder if we are going to have to institute a quad model for all schools in Halton next year. So this is, again, it's just thinking about the options on what that might look like, and we are in discussions about that. But this doesn't drive whether it's whether it can be accommodated. What it really does say, though, if in particular, if we're going to a quad model, we'll need to keep those 5 portables clearly for Milton District High School, and in essence, probably need closer to 12 portables for LC McGill.
Thank you for that clarity.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Trustee Gray.
Thank you. Through the chair, I have a question, and it's sort of a follow-up to Trustee Garrett's question line. And my question is this: in the contract that we establish with the companies that build schools, do we ever set construction completion timelines with appropriate and agreed upon consequences should timelines not be met?
I can take that question through the chair to trustees. Certainly, all of our larger construction projects have usually a stipulated some CCDC document, which is a Canadian Construction Document Committee, which does spell out timelines and dates, and there is a pretty strict program in place in terms of contract extension deadlines and such. There's even supplemental conditions that can be added to these contracts that do contemplate liquidated damages that try to make owners whole should contracts slip. I have found in my past that the use of that kind of language and that kind of approach sets you up to be adversarial with the partners that we want to work with and continue to work with within our community. So, you know, I am pleased to say I don't believe that, I haven't read the document because the document was signed before I joined the board, but liquidated damages is not something that we typically have utilized in the board, is my understanding. Further to that, like I said, my approach in my past has been working in partnership helping each other to assess risks and come together with I'll say a successful completion of the project. The timelines on this project, I think, were set up for failure long before the shovel was put in the ground. Lots of delays in terms of approvals to get to the point of construction. But certainly I can dive into the contract and see what's in there and explore what our options are. But I do believe we've got a contractor that's working very well for us, especially given the circumstances of the supply chain and the pandemic. And this building continues to be added onto and completed in a timely fashion. I think part of what I hope I can help to intercept at the outset of these projects in the future is a realistic deadline, so that we're not put under the gun with expectations that aren't achievable.
Can I add a comment, Chair Gerbens? I think it's important for trustees to understand, because we often hear this about penalties for not being on time. In the public sector construction, it's highly unusual that there are big penalties for construction being behind, partly because that's due to the many different layers of government and decision makers involved in the processes. So for big construction companies and contractors, it's a very, I don't want to say simple, but it's a pretty straightforward argument that the delays were not caused by them. And that's in normal times. That's not in a pandemic or when the United States government slaps tariffs on metal and aluminum and wood and all sorts of other things on. So we don't focus on that very much because it is such a challenge to do it that it hurts the relationships you have with the construction companies. It hurts the relationship you may have with the developers of the land. And generally, they're able to make an argument that is reasonable and logical that they may be part of the problem for the delay, but they're not solely responsible for the delay. And so I would give an example of this. The Oakville High School, we put in capital priorities in 2015. It was approved in 2019. So we're already delayed. And a construction company comes in and we're going to give them a timeline, and it's a difficult site that they would have to put that on, just as this one in Milton was. We had to make environmental conditions and do all sorts of things. So I think it sometimes seems an easy solution to say, well, the construction company, let's put a penalty for them not being on time. But if you look in the public sector, very few penalties are ever enforced because they're so difficult to prove, and you spend a lot of money trying to prove it.
Okay. There are no other speakers so far on the list, but I just wanted to say that I think that this solution is a good one, because there is nothing better than a vibrant campus for kids to go to. And I think that having the school within the school at Milton District provides that vibrancy of having those other kids in the other grades. And there is learning even in that. So I think this is going to be a good solution. Out of, the best solution would be the kids are in their own school. We can't have that. Doesn't exist. This is the next best thing. So I commend the staff. I know there's a lot of work that goes into this, and a lot of contingency that has to happen, which is a lot of extra work. Thank you very much for coming out, Principal Dooley. Appreciate you coming to our meeting this evening. Okay, Director Miller, do you have anything else?
No, I'm finished, Chair Gerbens.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're up to communications from the chair, and I would like to just, for those of you watching, there is quite the list of letters that are, we normally publish letters that we get from other boards and responses to our letters and things like that. We have a lot of letters. A number of them are about vaccinations, including our own letter that we had sent out just after the last board meeting around vaccinations, vaccination priorities for our staff. And we actually did receive a response from the Vaccine Distribution Task Force Secretariat. So that is in there if people would like to read it. We are happy that our staff are being vaccinated by Halton Public Health as a priority group. The other main topic of the letters that we have received or have been CC'd on are about the province's not so secret, but secret proposal, as in they're on expanding student access to remote and online learning. And you can see that in our package, there have been a number of letters. There have been a number of letters in previous packages. We have just put out a letter on Monday. It's not in this package because it missed the deadline, but it will be in our next package. And it speaks to more the process and the fact that there isn't evidence. We can't find any evidence that the proposal will actually be in the best interests of students. And it also speaks to the process not being transparent in the consultation or reasonable in depth or time. It's very concerning that some of these items seem to be moving forward, whether we like it or not. And they will have profound changes on our education system in Ontario, our world-class education system in Ontario. One of the letters that is listed in our board package is from CODE, which is the Council of Ontario Directors of Education. And I would actually like Director Miller, as a member of that council, to please speak to it.
Thank you, Chair Gerbents. I'm just pulling it up. This letter was written by CODE. And for those of you, I know trustees are aware, but any public, CODE is the Council of Ontario Directors of Education. And this includes all four systems: French public, French Catholic, and of course the public. And the letter has been written to Minister Lecce and Deputy Minister Naylor on behalf of all directors. And it's concerned around the very points that Chair Gerbents was speaking to about a permanent virtual online and where it is, where it may be going. There are 7 recommendations in this letter, and it's in the public package, so the public's entitled to read it. It was a private letter, but it appeared in the media, and it was in the Toronto Star and various other media outlets. So it is reasonable to suggest that we can speak to it, particularly since I am a member of that organization and was party to the letter itself. Chair Gerbents, would you like me to read out the recommendations? They're quite long, but they're significant.
I would.
Okay. The recommendations to the government are: we ask that the government indicate in writing that the constitutional rights of Catholic and French language boards will be protected. Specifically, online learning courses must be developed, funded, and approved by Catholic and French language boards. As well, online courses must be delivered by Catholic and French language teachers employed by Catholic and French language boards. Number 2, the government's implementation plan ought to be delayed until full equity of access can be guaranteed for all students at home. Number 3, Boards who operate virtual schools to reflect parent choice must be fully funded, as with all bricks and mortar schools, including administrative support. And can the government confirm that if a board does not offer an online course, will the student be taught by another board with funding transferred to the board or to TVO, TFO? Number 4, the government must provide clarity that all online courses will be delivered by school board staff only. Number 5, we ask that the government provide an open review of its intention to have TVO and TFO provide central coordination of online learning courses, given that those roles are already being met by school board consortia in a secure, student-friendly, and effective and efficient manner. For the Halton District School Board, we are not a member of the consortia. We have our own online program, which is very vibrant and robust. Number 6, the government should consider its plan to require boards to offer synchronous learning until there is strong research evidence that synchronous learning provides long-term benefits to student learning and well-being. Synchronous learning was developed in the middle of a worldwide pandemic as a temporary option for parents, and further research into its impact is strongly encouraged. And finally, number 7, we ask that the government formally respond to all aforementioned operational concerns identified above before any final decision is made. So there you have it. And this represents the Directors of Ontario. I know that OPSPA, and various other organizations are voicing the same concerns.
Thank you, Director Miller. Yes, OPSPA put out a letter actually quite a while ago, but their letter is public as well. And our letter, just to let people know that our letter will be going up on our website. I'm not sure if it's there right now, but in that letter is a link to the letters from other boards, trustee organizations, associations like Code, and other organizations and associations that support education, and their commentary on this. And it is a growing list. I'm actually maintaining that list. There's a link that goes to it, and it is growing. I added a letter to it, to that list yesterday from the District School Board of Niagara. So there is growing concern that a growing public concern. The concern is already there, but boards and associations are speaking out because they know that there are detrimental impacts for having this proposal become a reality. And I really do want to encourage people to please take a look, investigate, and take action. Write the minister, write your MPP. They need to hear from us. We need to make sure that changes to our education system are based in evidence, in data. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We haven't got year-over-year data to say anything about remote learning in the fashion that they're talking about. We would like to have that data. We want evidence-based decision making. We want to make sure that all equity lenses are taken into account when making these decisions. It just seems very rushed, and you wonder why. So I will leave it at that, and I do encourage you to take a look at the letter. I'm sure it will be posted underneath Chair's correspondence on our board website. I also wanted to mention that I do have a call with the minister every week, and we have been continually asking about when GSNs will be released, and he has been saying for a while, basically imminently. So hopefully that will be very soon. The other thing I want to do is really, and this is, I'm sure, on behalf of all my colleagues, is really thank our staff, our students, our families for all the extra work and stress that they are going through, have been going through, currently reliving in this lockdown again. It is hard. It is hard for everybody. And we know you're doing the work, and we really, really appreciate it. And the other organizations, there are other organizations that support our students and have been supporting them through these times. Students like the Halton Learning, organizations like the Halton Learning Foundation and Halton Food for Thought, Halton Food for Kids, and other organizations that try to wrap around students and make sure that they have what they need in order to succeed and be as well as we can at this time. So I want to, on behalf of the trustees, want to thank those organizations for the work that they're doing to help our students and their families, because they're part of families, of course, that are benefiting from the work that they do. And just a step back for a second, looking at remote learning. If there are options to have children, it's hard to support kids in a remote setting. It's hard to identify kids that are having a hard time with food insecurity and other issues when they're in a remote setting. That's another reason that we don't want necessarily a truly permanent option for remote learning. There are a lot of social issues that come along with that. We no longer would have eyes on people, and that can be very hard for some kids. And the last thing I wanted to say before moving on to committee reports is tomorrow is Earth Day. So I hope everybody has keeps the earth in mind, keeps environmental issues in mind tomorrow. Actually all the time, but especially tomorrow. So, if you want to take some time, you can still wander through a park. You can't actually use the amenities, but you can wander through the park and you can, make sure that it's, pick up litter and all sorts of things. Good to get out. The weather's supposed to be better later this week. Okay, committee reports. Are there any committee reports? Looking to the speakers list. Seeing none. Okay, trustee, hold on a second. Trustee Collard, I don't know if you've jumped the gun or if you have a committee report.
It's slow. Okay, so my committee report is that there will be a report coming to the board next meeting for DISC Part 2 professional development for trustees.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any other committee reports? Seeing no other speakers. Oh, yes, go right ahead, Trustee Garrett.
Just a real quick one. We have a boundary review steering committee and boundary review meeting tomorrow in Milton for Milton 11 and 12.
Okay, it's coming along. And I see Trustee Reynolds is also on the list. Go right ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just to let fellow trustees know that audit committee actually met yesterday, and the report will be coming at the next meeting.
Okay, great. And there are no other speakers on the speakers list, so we are now up to 5.9 public questions. So Vice Chair Harrison, have we any questions submitted this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair. through you, we did have one question submitted. And it's my understanding that Executive Officer Godet is going to reach out to the person directly to seek information and just to understand what may be done to address the challenge that's being experienced. Just in general, the question was related to a classroom and COVID-19 related stresses, but in respect of the privacy of the staff and students, it's going to be managed that way through direct contact. And I would also just note that the question isn't really a policy/governance related type question. So just to really reinforce to people to get in touch with colleagues or principals or superintendents to talk about those operational type issues that they may be having. You don't have to wait to a Board of Trustees meeting to raise those kind of questions. But if you do, I think it's our hope that we can assist with facilitating some kind of discussion and perhaps resolution to some of these things.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Trustee Oliver's jumped on the list. Is this a question or a comment from before, or is this something different, Trustee Oliver?
Sorry, I believe you skipped over trustee questions and comments.
Oh, I guess I thought, yes. Because I took, yeah, I had a bit of a brain fart. Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Chair. I have a general comment, which I will follow up with a question that I think is best suited for Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons. So we frequently discuss the need and desire for students to see themselves reflected in their teachers and senior education positions. To make that happen, we need a diverse pool of candidates, and one way to achieve that is to inspire and encourage our students to explore a potential career in education. So my question is there a specialist high skill major or OEP pathway program that would help encourage students to become teachers or early childhood educators?
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Oliver. The OEP program is specific to apprenticeable trades, and our SHISM, which is the specialist high skills major, is specific to various different industries and sectors. So in terms of teaching, no. ECEs, early childhood education, yes. That said, there is something in the works for this summer, which would be a new summer school course pilot for students who were interested in pursuing this, and goes a little deeper than that. And I see that our director has turned his camera on and he is smiling. So I'm looking at him to see if he would like to jump in on this and talk a little about some of the plans.
Thank you, Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons. So astute. Through you, Chair Gerbens, to Trustee Oliver. We're also in the midst of planning a conference for our students who identify as Black or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, persons of color, our BIPOC community, in which we will have staff who are BIPOC speaking with students about a career in education and about their career and so on. So that will it will happen. It will be happening in May sometime, and it will be a conference. So the intent is to have students see people like themselves and hear about their career and how they got there and some of the barriers they faced in getting there. And hopefully that will inspire a whole group of kids to pursue education as a viable choice, teaching and the other parts of education, ECEs, EAs, all different sections of education.
And as a follow-up to that, Trustee Oliver, we're also in conversation with the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and working on a pilot project for summer school as an offering that would be taking a course called Designing Your Future and making it specific to that, of education as a future, and looking to see if we can recruit students who would like to actually focus within there. And we're also looking at making that specific to racialized students, to see if we can drum up enough interest and offer that as a summer school full credit, and then have our UTM people come in and do the mentorship through the university program. So we will have more details once we get this finalized. So stay tuned.
And one final comment, through you, Chair Grabentz, to Trustee Oliver. Dr. Jula Moa, myself, Rob Etoff, Principal Dean Barnes, and Principal Mary Marshall have met with an organization called 100 Strong. It's a mentoring program specifically for Black boys, and many of the mentors are educators, and we're working with them, and stay tuned for more information on that.
Okay. Just as a follow-up, so thank you. That all sounds really wonderful. So are you thinking then that this will be the kind of a pathway to achieve this? So in other words, more like a summer school mentorship programs, as opposed to creating a dedicated pathway, like a SHISM pathway?
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Oliver. The specialist high skills majors are defined by the ministry in terms of where they're offered and how they're balanced. And they are all different sectors, and education is not one of the sectors. And so we wouldn't be able to develop a SHISM that was specific to teaching as a future career. It's very prescribed as to what you can look at. We do this in partnership with our coterminous board. We balance the SHISM offerings across the board, but they are prescribed in the areas in which we're allowed to offer them.
That's great. Thank you. So clearly you've taken a kind of a creative, out of the box approach in making the same thing happen for our students. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. There are no more speakers on the speakers list. Sorry, I flipped the order 5-8 and 5-9. We've already done 5-9. So we have exhausted our agenda, and I declare this meeting adjourned. Kevin, if you could let us know when we're offline.